Okay. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, Jesse. We got Jesse Heifetz. All you guys mostly know Jesse. He's my brother, my partner, best friend. And we have a special guest, Dave Himel, on the show today. And we're going to kick this off with a chat about a special project that we have done with Dave and some crazy fabric that we found. So, Dave, first of all, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to come on.
I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Wicked. We're excited. So let's kick this off. Jess, we know that you are addicted to polo. You're an avid collector. You're renowned in this space for having a wild collection. So why don't you just start by going into what is it about polo? Because we're obviously using polo fabric here in this project. What is it about polo that first intrigued you, and why did you go so deep into it, and why do you love it so much?
Well, I think, I kind of got into polo through vintage, right? So, as it stands here in North America, Ralph Lauren is definitely, without a doubt, the company that references vintage more than any other company. So that was kind of the initial attraction. And then, just the more and more I got to learn about the Ralph Lauren kind of culture, so to speak, it was just intriguing to me. And, I really got addicted to all the different amalgamations, so to speak, that they would make, and just the company culture, the aesthetic, the Americana, and also the lineage, of it's kind of like the American dream story, right?
Right.
So, Jewish guy from Brooklyn gets into the tie business and creates this incredible company that encompasses kind of like the American aesthetic to the core, from, the very earliest days, from, Western wear and workwear, turn of the century, until now. And then it kind of just branched off from there, learning about the kind of, there's different sects. So you have the double RL guys, the real vintage enthusiasts. You have the country club types that wear Ralph, and then you have the hip hop kind of crowd that kind of really gravitated to Ralph in the 90s. And so I think, my attraction draws from a number of those avenues. And I just really got into it. So that's
awesome.
That's the Coles notes on it.
Yeah. Okay, so Dave, I'll do an intro here. Something very important to note is that you are,
I'm very excited about this intro. I got to tell you, to hear someone talk about me for once, that's not me. That's going to be cool.
All right, well, sit back, enjoy. You are Jesse's mentor, which in turn kind of became my mentor, because Jesse sort of brought me in after you helped him a lot in the business, and you taught him so much about vintage, about the game, about the players in the game, and obviously your passion about leather. So you are one of the OGs. You are the king of leather, I'm going to say.
Well,
you have crazy.
Yeah.
You have,
I attest to that.
All right.
You have crazy collections of leather. You've seen it all. And you were doing it during the time when you were able to find a lot of this stuff more easily than you are now.
Yeah.
And then you branched off and you created your own brand, which I will say too. You talked about it for a long time, pre actually doing it. And I was, it made me very proud of you actually that you went and did it, and you followed through with your dreams. And now you are living your dream, which is to have your own leather jacket manufacturing company, which is renowned all over the world, in Japan, with collectors, with all, the people Jesse talked about, the people who love polo and the people who love the aesthetic of Americana and that whole world. So that's the intro. What do you think?
I think when I die, you got to come to my funeral and you can do that again. Okay. That sounds great. So,
awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
dream, nightmare. Always hard to guess which one it is depending on the day, but I appreciate that. That was an excellent encompassment of moi. So there you go. Yeah.
Awesome. if I might just add to that really briefly, Drew.
Yeah.
It's my relationship with David. So yeah, in the early days when I first got into the vintage clothing business, David kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot of stuff. At the time, I was selling quite a bit of stuff to David, and he really taught me a lot. And when a lot of people were like kind of roadblocking the industry for me, not just for me, but for any newcomers in the industry, David really opened his door for me and took me under his wing. And I just want you to know, Dave, I'm so appreciative of that because you really.
That's kind.
Yeah.
Don't make me weep.
No, not at all. But you really taught me a lot, and we have a lot in common. We're two Toronto Jewish guys, and we both love vintage. And David even knew our dad, David.
Yeah,
so
the first wave of great Schmata lords,
That's right.
lords.
That's right. So I've seen David's collection, and it is absolutely jaw-dropping incredible. So kudos to you, David, for doing what you've done. And it speaks for itself, your work. It's incredible.
Thanks, Jess.
No problem. So let's talk about the collab.
Yeah, so we partnered up to your leather manufacturing skills with this insane fabric that we had found. Now, quickly give us your relationship to, say, Polo over the years, Dave.
Are you like my relationship to Polo? That's a very interesting, complicated question. Let's say my first relationship with Polo was when I moved from a very waspy neighborhood in Etobicoke called the Kingsway to North York, and discovered my neo-Jewish roots, where everybody who was cool was wearing a polo shirt, and of course I was dressing like a Kmart waspy kid and going, what is this? What is this brand that I don't have and my parents won't pay for? So that was literally Polo 1. I would say Polo 2 was, and Jesse would know about all these characters, but back in the 90s, we used to supply the team at RRL with design pieces that the vintage clothing game morphed into a collapse between what was cool in Japan street fashion to directly trying to game street fashion before the lag time in Japan. And so Polo had a crack team of design buyers that were looking for high-end, rare vintage pieces. And in an odd way, that's what spawned the leather jacket business for me, because I believe it was Spencer back in those days, Spencer Birch and Melissa, right? So I had sold one of my rare 30s jackets, and they had made a whole run of them. And I just sort of looked at it and I was like, I could make rare vintage jacket referenced material. I'm kind of like that expert nerd in this topic, so maybe I'll just start hoarding my vintage jackets, which at the time, being a vintage dealer, was quite an expensive hoard of hoarding. So, and to the chagrin of those who would like to buy them, were like, why won't you sell me your jackets, man? Who I'm imitating there. So so really my first days of Polo were selling rare pieces and then not selling leather jackets so that I could build my own jacket brand. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's kind of an esteemed thing in the vintage world. We've all done it. To sell to Ralph Lauren for design. It's like, if you can get the piece to Ralph Lauren, it's kind of this, puts you on a pedestal, and it's like the final best end result sometimes for certain pieces, and
for sure. But in those days, I didn't really understand the new fashion game. It was new, the relationship between new brands and vintage dealers. That was just like forming in the 90s. By the time you guys became the kings of this stuff, that whole wave of collectible Polo, like, there wasn't really collectible Polo when I started. There was no such thing, right? And if I had known Polo was going to become a collectible thing, man, I would have had a collection.
Could have hoarded that.
It's
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't have known that, right? But that's definitely an interesting shift in the way, we went from the 90s to the 2000s, 210s, 220s, how vintage is constantly moving the envelope forward as to what is vintage. So I'm out of it. I don't know what the envelope is. That's your area, Jesse. You're the envelope king, as we say.
Me and Drew.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. So
so it's exciting that we've come together now to work with you finally after all these years, because you've had Himmel Bros for many years now, right?
Yeah.
When was it founded?
I started in 2008, and I made my first official jackets in 2010. So I launched them at Inspiration and at the airport, and
the hangar.
Yeah, the hangar. That was amazing. I think they're tearing that airport down now. So
no way. The first inspo sent them on a hangar.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the jacket. Just show some of the jackets here. Explain about the fabric.
Just it's an interesting sidebar here, but the fabric we found, the Ralph Lauren fabric, is actually Polo Country fabric, which was kind of the precursor to RL. This fabric dates back to 1991, and it's
also your favorite genre of Polo, which is the country line.
Yeah, so it was quite the exciting find, and it was actually initially found by an acquaintance in the vintage industry from Europe, who was scouring some old manufacturing facilities, and I believe this was at a wool mill in Italy where it was originally made, and he found, I believe it was 8 or 10 bolts of it, and it had the original RLPO on it. So I do have that somewhere, and so this is really an unheard of find, because it's also one of the most sought after patterns in Ralph Lauren circles. It's called the Fireball pattern, and it's like their take on like a Great Beacon blanket or something like that. So anyways, we'll jump into it, and I'll show you that. David can speak on the jackets.
Nice. Pretty amazing that we've been able to it's like this weird circle now. We found the vintage fabric. Your jackets are designed from your history in the vintage world, which we will get into deep, because I want to know all about your design process later. And being able to come together on this after all this time, I'm pretty stoked. And launching at Inspiration, where you first launched Himmel Bros, is also epic.
That's going to be nice. This is a meta project, right? So this is a jacket that comes from a reference that goes back all the way to the beginning of the formation of Canada and blankets and coats. So, and we can get into that, in more detail.
Sick.
But let's look at what we made. Yeah,
let's look at these jackets. And guys, these are friggin' incredible. Like, I saw the photos. I just have to say this. When I had them in hand, I was floored, man. So anyways, let's jump right in. So David, I believe this is one that you call your Canuck.
Yeah, that's the Canuck. So what do you want to know about that? It's pretty sweet.
Well, what was the inspiration for this jacket? Obviously, Canuck, guys, is like kind of not a bad slang term, but it's a term used to basically for Canadians, right?
It's like it comes from the World War One, and in World War II, Canadian soldiers were referred to as Johnny Canuck. So there's a short form for Canadian. So I thought, that was one of the designs for the first 4 jackets I made, and I really tried to reclaim the role that Canada had in the heritage of North American clothing that's sort of been obfuscated by the fact that the vintage market prefers American-made things to Canadian-made things. So when I built the brand, I wanted it to be uniquely Canadian. So I picked names that are tied to Canadian history. But that jacket itself is also about a reclamation of Jewish history and that jacket was based on a really incredible brand called Schanhaus and Sons. And Schanhaus was a Russian Jewish immigrant, was a glove maker, shows up in Rockwell, Illinois, and he really invents a coverall, for factory workers, and he opens a leather jacket company. And this is one of his early, when he would have still been alive, I think. He made a sort of workers' railroad car coat that was very, very minimalist and simple. And because it was one of my favorite vintage pieces, I really sort of updated it a little bit in terms of the pattern and replicated that simplicity. And that is fundamentally what that design is based on. And that coat is this incredible polo blanket. And we pieced it together like a puzzle to come up with a really classic pattern. And then we used British Brisbane moss corduroy, which is a very early corduroy company out of England, as the liner. And we used the Japanese shinki horsehide for the leather finishing and trim. And I think it comes out like it pops, and I feel like it's really close to the tradition of blanket coats. And there's a long tradition of blanket coats going back to 1811, or 1807. So
it's an incredible piece, guys. It's beautiful purple cord lining. Like David said, horsehide. We've got horsehide details on the cuff, on the pockets, as well as the collar, and the collar, like details, incredible details.
And those are dead stock 30s buttons that I got from Canadian Button Factory before they closed down.
So the details, guys, it's all in the details. You've got your adjustable buckles on the back. It is just absolutely gorgeous. So that's the first one, guys.
This is my first time seeing these. Something we should mention too is that these are all one of one. We didn't do production runs of any of these coats. There's 6 coats, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
6 coats, period. One of each. And, like Dave said, that's pieced together to have a symmetrical flow on the fabric, and that's complicated in itself.
Oh, that was
right?
insane. That pattern on that fabric is like wild, so.
Yeah.
Well, guys, here we have the next one. This jacket is so cool. It's just so incredible to me. But David, tell us about this one.
So that coat, on my website, that's called a Chevalier. It's a nice French Quebec homage. And that coat is based on one of the sexiest leather jackets ever made by a company called Leather Togs. That was, in jacket history, you could basically attribute them to designing the modern double rider jacket. But that was almost like, this is their Rocket Man design. This design is an offset zipper. It's basically like a 1930 motorcycle rider's hero jacket. Like, there's no other way to describe the pattern. Now, I altered the design to create some unique features that are very different than the original jacket, with different back and a different fit for the pattern, because people are not the same as they were in 1930. And that big D pocket in the middle is authentic to Leather Togs. I met a young jacket collector in Japan who showed me his very rare collection of Leather Togs jackets, and he pulled out this Centinela jacket with a D pocket splashed right in the middle, and I'd never seen it. So I'd always wanted to recreate it, because it's got to be one of the rarest. If you look at all the vintage leather jackets ever collected, Leather Togs is the rarest, almost. Eaters, Leather Togs. And then this Leather Togs jacket, of which this kid had too, with a D pocket right in the middle, that is up there in the probably top 10 rare jackets I've ever seen. So incredible. I recreated that with the blanket pattern on the front, and then the very clean, simple back. So I think it worked really well.
works incredible. So just want to point out a couple more details on this. So you've got beautiful talon zippers on all these jackets. And this is a really unique feature as well. These snaps are double-ended snaps where you could take the cover off and then snap it back to here as well. So really cool. Another additional pocket here. Beautiful. Again, you have an inside pocket. Beautiful corduroy lining. Even the epaulettes are lined with the corduroy. Some great spot work on these jackets, on this jacket as well, around the pocket and on the epaulettes. The deep pockets grommeted in. Like, the details are they speak for themselves. It's an incredible piece.
Beautiful.
Absolutely incredible. And on the cuffs. So another gorgeous, gorgeous jacket. Moving along. We have this beauty number here.
Yeah. And that's what we call the Ross Mark I, named after a Canadian rifle. And that's your classic D-pocket jacket. Again, referencing the first classic double rider jacket, which was a leather togs jacket. And we used their pocket and their basic construction to build that block for that jacket. And it's really, there's no more perfect a combination of an aviator style with a motorcycle style than that jacket. And then creating, and I don't know if you noticed, but all the blanket patterns match up in a very sort of symmetrical way, which is really incredibly difficult to do. And we've got old stock belt buckles on those, and all those rivets are hand tapped in and authentic to sort of 30s riveted construction, which is what they did with the leather to reinforce all the pockets and belts back in the day.
Absolutely. And you can
Beautiful
see here,
mid belt on that.
nice half belt, horsehide there. And I love how the westerns, or the kind of the crop here, just absolutely matches. It's just incredible work. This one's lined with like a Troy style blanket liner. Is that correct, David?
Zoom in on that one. Yeah, that's the replica Japanese Troy blanket liner. So I had that replicated in Japan and brought in, and it's very authentic to your 1930s work jackets. So it's a double wool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Again, guys, you got the talon zippers and some spots here on the cuffs. Beautiful, beautiful jacket. Now, this one, David, has another story as well, I believe. This is what you call your Wolverine, if I'm correct?
Yeah. So one of the ways that my brand started, the first jacket I made was a 1930s A1 style jacket based on a very, very, very rare jacket that I have in my collection that had this beautiful scalloped collar. And when I started in 2010, no one had really been making A1 jackets. They had fallen out of fashion. I believe the last one I'd seen was a French brand from the 90s, Chevalier. And I launched that as my principal jacket. It was called the Heron, named after the bird that we often see when we're canoeing in Canada. And it became the sort of key signature jacket of my brand. And when I was a vintage clothing dealer, I loved grizzly jackets. They were just so absurd and so rare. I mean, maybe I found 5 grizzly jackets in my decade pluses of picking. And it was just so rare to find. So I wanted to imagine a 1930s version of a grizzly jacket. And there was this brand called King of Fur. They were a horse blanket manufacturer. And when the car was invented, they had no market for their fur. And they started making coats. And they made these crazy coats in the 20s and the 30s, these crazy grizzly jackets that were super primitive. So I tried to imagine the ultimate grizzly jacket I could find picking. And that's where that design came from. So it's a 30 style A1 with grizzly panels, but in this case, instead of fur, we used the blanket, and we used a replica 30 zipper. It's all very, very authentic to the original patterning, right?
Yeah, so this is a beautiful Talon replica 30 zipper with like the deco design. It's a grommeted here in the bottom. I mean, the details on this are impeccable. It's got this kind of olive drab corduroy lining and beautiful back
It's like a
details.
keystone. Yeah.
It is. It's front quarter horsehide. The cuffs are lined with the blanket. It is just gorgeous.
Those pockets on the front, you'll recognize, Jesse and Drew,
Yep.
from when you pick Canadian-made horsehide jackets in the 40s and the 50s, they always had that unique flap that you could tuck in, and it could just be like a slash pocket or like a pocket cover, and you only see that in Canadian jackets. So part of that design was to build that sort of unique Canadian feature into my magical fantasy grizzly jacket, right?
And that's what he means, guys. So you can fold the flap in, or you can pull it out and button it down. Convertible, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's like a convertible slash pocket if you like that look better.
Yeah, it's really great. Okay. Next, we have this.
So that's another Chevalier, but that's one without the D pocket. And that's
Right.
the stock model on my website. But you know what you might want to do is just like open it up and snap it open. It has like a really cool look when it's snapped over. And one of the unique things about this jacket style is that when they made it, the guys that bought leather togs, they were motorcycle riders at a time when there weren't paved roads. And these jackets were really designed like shirts, you know, skin tight, put it on. They were a little bit longer. They wore high-waisted leather pants, so the pant would fit under the jacket, and you could like affix the belt to the belt loop of the pant so that if you fell off on the dirt or the mud or the rocks, that the whole thing wouldn't peel away and expose your skin. But because it's offset zipper, you need that snap to pull down if you want to open it up and like get air in there. Otherwise it just hangs open. So it's like, because it's weighted way to one side. So it's really cool. It's a really cool design. It's sort of a perfect homage to cavalry jackets, the double-breasted cavalry jacket of the 19th and 18th century that you would see in military. So, you know, they transit from horse to motorcycle, and this jacket transits from like a horseback cavalryman's jacket that you would get in the military to a motorcycle with a zipper, with the modern tech of the 1930s.
Yeah, it's really great. And guys, I think Drew and I have referenced this before, but Japanese call this pussy style. It's got this beautiful gusset on the back that's horse in the middle, and just great details. Such a great job matching up the pattern. It's incredible. The belt. I mean, every detail on this is spot on. It's got a replica Talon deco zipper, and it is just gorgeous.
That slash in the back was before people had invented arm expansion gussets that would fall right where the armpit is. That slash, when you put your arms forward, that opens up the back. So if you were riding a motorcycle, you could actually move your arms forward. They wouldn't lock up, and you could grab your handlebars and ride. So really, that's like before the bi-swing back behind the shoulder blades, that gusset was the center gusset. So it was not super effective compared to a bi-swing back, but in the early days of jacket design, there wasn't like a group of scientists coming up with these things. These guys were working it out in their minds, you know?
Right. And in my experience, you typically see those on more sports style coats than you do motor. Well, obviously it was probably on motorcycle coats for such a short period. And you saw them mostly on sports jackets.
World War II, the U.S. military hired people to design more efficient fighting clothing. And that wasn't an efficient design. So, you know, you see all this innovation coming out of the war. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Love that.
And last but certainly not least, guys, we have this incredible stadium style jacket. Dave, you want to tell us about this one?
You know, I highly covet 1930s style varsity jackets. I know you guys have had some real amazing jackets. I've seen some of Jesse's show up in Larry Heller's books here and there. So the beauty of stadium jackets from that period, from the 20s and the 30s, is they weren't just school jackets. They were folk art. People customized them with chain stitch patches and their own sort of designs, and created real works of art. So, and they were really fitted as compared to, say, like the modern varsity looks that are super loose. Those jackets were absurdly nerd fitted, normcore squared. And I always loved that pattern. And so I designed one with 2 D pockets, double Ds, as I like to call them, and which ultimately are the hand pockets, and built it with that same narrow framework. And then we had the knits designed and knit in Seattle at a company that was doing knits in World War II. So we replicated the World War II double weave knit on
And
the
that's
cuffs.
this guy's bottom. It's very authentic.
Yeah, and those buttons are dead stock 30s, 40s buttons from the factory up here, cat-eye buttons. They're a melamine plastic, so the solid color all the way through. And I believe the liner on that one is Harris Tweed, which
That's
is,
correct.
the Tweed company hand-loomed in Scotland and commissioned.
It's almost like a Black Watch plaid.
Yeah.
Which is great because Ralph used a lot of Black Watch plaid. And in fact had some garments dedicated to Black Watch. And David, this is blue horse suede, is that correct?
That is Shinky horse suede, yeah. So that's a horsehide suede, and that's a top grain horsehide suede. So that's not like a cheap suede split. So a lot of people don't know the difference between suede and suede. A lot of suede is garbage leather, meaning when you're tanning leather and you need to make it an even thickness, they split the leather, the skin, in the different dermis. And suede was often the lower dermis, which doesn't really have much cellular strength, right? It's the underskin. And suede would be considered like a cheap byproduct of the tanning process. But this is authentic to early suede, like the kind of suede that would have been made in block tanneries in San Francisco. That's where their tech district is. And Herman Block would use a sanding machine and sand the top skin layer of the leather so that it was both sueded, soft, and still strong, right? So that's a top suede, right? Which is a very unusual process. You would have a hard time finding that anywhere.
I've never even heard that before. So guys, just jackets are fabulous. They're amazing, incredible. These images and this video doesn't do these justice. You got to see them in person. They are going to be launching at this upcoming Inspiration in Pasadena, California, and they're all one of one. So
that is it. What we just showed was the total collection and the total inventory. There's no stock behind this. Dave, those descriptions were great. You have all the details, and you have it like. I can't wait to get deeper into this topic because
I'm holding back. Okay.
Well, you guys can get really, really deep now. I'm gonna let you guys go momentarily. I just want to plug this really quick. This was our original hat that I did with overlooking the Hudson. This was the first project we did with the Fireball fabric, and if you're one of the lucky owners of one of these limited edition hats, you could be an owner of the jacket, one of the jackets to match, which all of us Polo people love to do. Anyhow, David, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to work with you and for all of the knowledge you've imparted on myself and my brother over the years. And we hold you in the highest regard. And anybody watching this, go to David's website. They'll plug it later. He's got incredible stuff. And you guys get into your story. And love you guys both. I'll talk to you guys soon, okay?
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to LA, man.
We're going to have a blast.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, guys.
Talk to you later on.
Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to that podcast with Dave Himel of Himmel Bros Leather. Okay, this is just a teaser for this weekend's drop for inspiration. We wanted to get everybody in the know of what we're up to, but his full episode is going to drop next Monday because we get into it. There's like 2 more hours of us chopping it up about leather, about his history, about how the jacket came to be, blanket jacket history of Hudson Bay Company. It's actually a crazy in-depth talk that we have for about 2 hours. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you come out to Inspiration. If you want to know more about the jackets, hit us up on IG, at Drew Heifetz, at Jesse Heifetz, at Himmel Bros. Follow at Woke Dirty Uncle. And see you guys soon. Thanks again for tuning in.